Here we are with the next rendition of All Things Richmond podcast featuring local Richmond folks doing interesting things, folks that have their finger on the pulse of Richmond. And after talking to John Reinhold here, I think he would fit that category very well. We were just joking that we've got 8 hours of content to condense into 20 minutes, so we won't waste any time. So we are here at 2501 Monument, the Branch House. You want to tell the folks just what this is, what the building we're in here?
It's one of the older buildings in Richmond, I would say. A former residence in Richmond that dates very back. I believe the architect was Pope. Who built it? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So
Sounds
this is
good to
our.
It's a pretty cool building. It's like a castle.
Place of business.
And this is where RVA Mag is headquartered.
That's right.
So you are the CEO of Inkwell Ventures, which owns Gay RVA and RVA Mag. You want to tell the folks a little bit about what RVA Mag is and I guess how it started and what it's about?
Yeah, RVA Magazine was started in 2005 by Tony Harris. We grew up together. It is a art and culture magazine in the beginning primarily. And so he made the magazine then, and we've grown quite a bit, since then. Now we're all things art, music, politics.
Right.
And that's kind of where that came. And then I think it was 2012 we purchased Gay RVA and kind of brought in the LGBT coverage and media into Inkwell Ventures. And so now we produce all of that.
Right. So I guess before I meant to start at the beginning. So you grew up in Bassett, Virginia.
Yes.
And how did you find your way to Richmond?
Well, I went to VCU, and originally,
Just curious, back then, what drew you to VCU from growing up in Southwest Virginia?
well, probably money for one
Sure.
reason.
Yeah.
Going out of state to go to college was a hard thing to find the money for.
Right.
I originally was into marketing, of course, as
Right.
you might imagine, but I got the acting bug. And when I got the acting bug, I decided I wanted to be an actor. And that made me audition for different colleges. And I auditioned and got in a couple different ones. But VCU was the obvious choice because of in-state tuition. And also they had a good arts program. And I liked Richmond from the get-go, And now saying it's kind of funny, but I did. I camped here. I liked the history of it. I liked that there was a river.
Right.
So
Yeah, and we were talking off camera about its progression since 1997, since you got here, how it's completed. I mean, we'll jump into some of that in a second. So you knew Tony growing up, and then how did you first get involved with RVA Magazine, and what was your involvement back then?
So originally, I jumped in as a salesperson, and that kind of happened as I was in between jobs, and I wanted to not really do it.
Right.
Originally I was like, sales. No, I got out of that.
Right.
I was in audio production and audio video producing of everything from independent films, audio of independent films, and I worked for a studio. So in between jobs, I jumped into RVA Magazine doing sales on the side during the summer when I had some time off. I did not really expect myself to be as involved as I am now.
Right.
But it certainly just kind of turned out that way.
Right.
And the sales kind of worked for me after some time, and I found myself enjoying it. I think I enjoyed the connections to the local owners and the business owners, and getting to kind of like go through Richmond and go meet the owner of the restaurant or the owner of this business and get to know them and talk to them and show them the magazine and show them support of the arts and music that we were doing.
Right. So you progressed from being a reluctant salesperson to now being an owner and CEO of the company. So how does that happen over time?
Lots of hard work.
Yeah, I bet.
Over time we had a number of different investors in RVA Magazine, myself included, and I think that we just grew along with the city.
Right.
As we were talking earlier, I never really kind of thought about it. But now that I'm thinking about it, how I talked about how the city grew, there was just Twisters in the beginning, and going to VCU and just being like, oh, there's that one venue, Twisters, and then the Camel popped up, and other places, and more musicians, and then art, and then now there's an art walk. So as all that grew, and RVA Magazine started covering that, and that started growing, I think that the magazine did the same along with everything.
Sure.
And then, as you get older, hopefully you get a little bit better at what you do. It can, if you're in a smaller company, you can learn how to grow that company by making connections, and that's all that we've done is really make those connections.
Yeah. So some of the connections you made early on was in the craft beer scene.
Yes.
Love to hear you talk about that, about your you're involved, like your friendship with On and the Hardywood guys, and just the beginning of the craft beer scene. I'd love to hear you talk some about that.
Yeah, so early on in 2008, 2009, right around that time, I was already going to Mekong to eat at Mekong for some time. And I knew On, of course, and he started getting into craft beer, and then he would give me that craft beer, and I would try it and be like, "That's cool." And so I got into it. Not everybody at the magazine was into it. They were like, "What's this? This is kind of weird."
Right, because back then you would go to a bar and get a Bud Light, Miller Lite, Coors Light, and then Mekong had some weird stuff.
Right, you get Legend, and that was cool because I like Legend. So being able to have a kind of craft brew from Richmond, Virginia, that was cool. But there wasn't anything else. There was Richabrow for a little bit, but that really wasn't a whole lot. So On introduced me to these things, and then I was like, well, there's these craft brews. They're pretty cool. Why don't we talk about this in the magazine? I eventually kind of convinced other ownership of the magazine to allow reviews and talking about craft beer and showing craft beer. This is way before Hardywood or anything was around. There was just really Legend and Richabrow. And then eventually more breweries started popping up, which was already happening in other places. And then Hardywood came. Right. And then, that was a big boon. Sure. And then I think we know what else happened, the Arden Triple Crossing and more Licking Hole Creek, and just go to Scott's Edition now, and they're all there.
Yeah, you just walk around, you bump into one.
You kick a rock, just like these, they say
swing a dead cat.
You're just like, and there's a brewery. So over time, as the breweries started popping up more and more, and it became more of a, as we talked about, a destination. Sure. I think our coverage of it, for me, was always just like natural. Yeah. It was never, and I'm just being real honest about it here, it was never like, let's put beer coverage in the magazine to make money. That was just not the plan. I thought it was cool. I thought that we could talk about it. And if we had support from the breweries on our music and our coverage, and that's great. I already had On's support because he's always been such a supportive person. Right. It just kind of like, for ourselves, felt natural. And it also felt to me like a part of the arts and culture of Richmond, Virginia. Sure. Like I said, like a brewer has to make a craft, and the craft is the brew itself. Right. And there's a lot of ways to go about it to have your own artistic expression. And I've always believed that to be part of it.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see like the evolution of just the craft culture in general, because I think a lot of folks back then, me included, I would say 10 years ago, would have said, yeah, you've got big companies that make a profit making a product. It doesn't have to be that great, but they market it well. And now, in Richmond, if you want to open a business in Richmond and it's about food or beer or anything, it's got to be really good. It's got to be, and so the term starving artist was a term that people used a lot. And I think there was some skepticism about from a lot of people about folks creating a beer or creating the best biscuits in the world on Robinson Street, right? Or whatever product you're making it the best. But a lot of these entrepreneurs have created really good products and now created really good businesses out of these products. That's right. I mean, have you seen, has that evolution surprised you at all? I mean, you came through it, but I mean, there's a lot of these breweries are good businesses. They're not just a good product.
Right. I think I'd be lying to tell you I expected it. Yeah. I really feel like that would be a complete and utter lie by me. Sure. Of course, I always expected it. I knew that this was going to become a giant brewery scene. No, yeah. I absolutely did not. I knew that like Mekong was going to be a great craft brew hang, and then when Hardywood popped up, I thought that's awesome. We have a really big craft brewer that I think is going to explode and do great in this area. Right. But then others started popping up, and it really became like an Asheville, North Carolina of Richmond. Sure. That's what I thought, because I went to Asheville before, and there's breweries all around there too.
You got that weed eater on here, Whit. Perfect time.
Rock that weed eater for us. Thanks a lot.
Because I guess the artist in me like appreciates the person making that beer that they put so much time and energy and work into, right? But the realist in me says, well, it's no good if that entrepreneur can't keep that business afloat for more than a week. You know what I mean? But these, like, if you up and down Gray Street and the restaurants and Churchill, the restaurants and the breweries in Scott's Edition, Richmond's become this kind of destination of this craft culture. It's amazing.
Yeah, craft culture. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah. Actually, craft culture can be food, it can be art, or it can be the beer. You know? And I think. Someone once said, why don't you open up a brewery, John? And I was like, well, if you actually meet the brewers and the owners specifically and see what they have to put into doing that, forget it. I'm not even remotely. I can't do that on my own. Sure. No. You have to buy the barrel systems. You have to have the right weight on the floor to have those barrels in there. Right. The water, the glycol. Oh my gosh. It's its own art of being able to even open up a brewery. I can come in as a marketing manager and help you with it.
Right.
But the whole setup and keeping that afloat, that's really a lot.
Sure.
And so for me, I really admire.
Yeah.
I admire those people that can do that and make it happen.
Sure. Yeah, me too. So one thing we talked about earlier, which I think was interesting, is early on, you coming from like a journalistic point of view, recognizing the craft beer scene early on as something that's going to be a thing, is the way you described it, which I think which is pretty interesting. I would love to hear how and why you recognize that, but also what you think RVA Mags and other other forms of media like you that have I guess helped promote these companies, which are now have become this big tourist destination in Richmond.
Yeah, well,
it's a long question.
Yeah, it is a long question. Let's
start with breaking a small segment.
Let's break it down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Your recognition of the craft beer industry first. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that it was a topic of conversation that was not like music or art even. Mm-hmm. Like you could go hang out at a bar and have a conversation about the beer. I don't know. You gotta like geek out a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
But it crossed borders.
Right.
So like you can be talking to an older person that's like 60 years old, and you can be like this young grunge guy that plays in a band or punk guy that plays in a band that likes craft brew too.
Right.
And you can like talk about the brew and what you like.
Right.
It crossed everything.
Right.
And so I found that fascinating. I thought that's so cool that you could have a CEO of a company, maybe a big company, be like, oh, I love this about Bell's, and then having like, you know, a heavy metal lead singer for whatever band be like, oh, you like that too, and then they talk.
Yeah.
Like
that's cool.
There's not a lot of things that do that.
Right.
You know? And so I was like, man, we need to have this conversation. And you know, things that not everybody talk about is like with women love craft brew too. Right. So it crosses that genre too, where you can like have that conversation. So it was something that seemed very organic to me, and I think that's why we were interested in it.
Yeah.
You know?
And so RVA Mag started covering beer back with just Mekong and just Hardywood, and now there's thousands of them. Yeah. And so I mean, like you think you got people like you had an impact on the popularity of I know you said earlier you don't want to take credit from the person making the beer, but you guys had to give them a little boost by talking about it online.
I mean, I hope so. I hope that's the truth. I feel like if nothing else, we were there to cover it and be a part of it. You know, the people who brought it here, the people who put their savings and their money, and people like that have like supported everyone, they grew it. You know?
Yeah.
We're a part of talking about that growth.
Sure.
And we're also a part of it by being at all the events. And like I told you, I have the Mekong tattoo right down here.
Yeah. Where can the camera see that?
I don't know if the camera can see it.
Is that the Mekong tattoo?
I don't know if you.
That's Richmond right there.
Richmond.
That's all things.
My super Richmond hipster tattoo. It's funny. But like the support. Being a part of like the Mekong race team, we did the dragon boats together, and then
were you there when Whit slurped down all that faux?
Oh, I've been a part of all those.
Faux show. Yeah.
I'm a faux king.
Yeah.
I'm a faux king. So I've got the crown twice.
Oh, you won it?
Twice.
Oh, wow.
I'm the original.
Whit came in like 9th, I believe, right? Okay.
I've seen him do it a couple times.
Keep practicing, Whit.
He'll get it.
Cool. All right, so let's talk about how did Gay RVA come into the fold, and talk a little bit about your the Pride and the event festival. You guys' involvement there.
Yeah. Well, Kevin Clay owned Gay RVA, and we would share articles between us about LGBT issues individually. And as I had told you before, we're already covering arts and music, so we're very, in a lot of ways, liberal, and about just people being expressive. And so at some point, Kevin Clay approached us about purchasing Gay RVA, and we did.
Cool.
It wasn't a very hard decision.
Right.
It was mostly like he felt like we could continue it, and we did. And so we did purchase it, and we have continued the conversation about LGBT, and it was such a perfect fit because when you come from a background like mine in theater, art and performance is like an inherent part of it.
Right.
And so for me, I just really wanted to support that and be a big part of it. So Pride Fest with the whole Virginia Pride board, we do the magazine for them at both of the Pride Festival, and we do a Summer Pride. And so we have the #1 LGBT media source in Virginia, and we're proud of that. We love the support, and we love the articles and everything that we can do to be a part of what goes on and the issues inherent with it,
Yeah.
at one point, like Obama was in office, and like it was towards the end. It almost felt like, well, everything's been accomplished, and then things went, I then just got turned on the side, and we're like, cool, we're still here. We got plenty more to talk about, apparently.
Lots of work to do.
There's a lot still going on. So it's been great. It's been something that has been a real boon to our media as a whole.
Right.
When you think about the coverage of what we do,
right.
it just fits right in with being able to put that kind of media in the right area.
Yeah, so you talked earlier, too, about how RVA Mag is the intersection of art, music, and politics. So explain to me why, you did earlier, we'd love the viewers to understand it. Why do you think that's so powerful, and why is that important?
Because it's a part of everything. It's kind of impossible in 2018 to not have your music that you consume and the art that you consume and the culture around you without having those conversations. And so this year in particular for RVA Magazine, with our new political director, Landon Schroeder, and an owner and partner, to bring that into the fold in a larger way. We've always kind of like, a little bit, but now we're like opening up that conversation to be a sounding board for the people that are here in Richmond. And we want to be that sounding board. So it's been a very natural progression as something that we can do. I think I pointed out to you the Donald Glover, Childish Gambino, saying how it's just like the conversation of what's going on around us is a part of our culture, and everything every day, from the president down, or from the president up, whatever, it's just a constant part. So what we want to do is hopefully take the arts and music and culture and everything we've always been a part of, and take the politics and the conversation and tie them all together and have that conversation. And it's very important not to be scared to have that conversation, and sometimes you're talking about things that aren't easy, but you have to be willing to do it to really connect to a younger generation and let them know that you're willing to have these harder conversations.
Well, that's great. So let's move over to the your DJing background. So tell me a little about how that got started and your DJing history, and where you DJ now.
How long are we in this? Okay.
Be the 3-minute answer. How about that?
Okay, cool. So I've been DJing for about over 15 years. I started in college, totally terrible. And over the years, it's been a hobby of mine. But I would play parties, and I DJ'd originally like house music. I remember DJing with the owner of Culture at the time, and eventually DJ'd RVA Magazine parties as well, and then Gallery 5 parties. When Gallery 5 first started opening, I would play upstairs during every art opening. This kind of gets into the whole art music tie together, the art walk, and then eventually that went outside. The Fire Spinners, I met the whole crew there. Conway Jennings and I became really close friends. Started DJing out in front of Gallery 5. We had Fire Spinners. Then we had parties afterwards. We had Halloween parties at various warehouses, and so I DJ'd quite a bit, And eventually that all kind of came to Revolution, where we were able to bring. And this is on the uprising of EDM. I'm trying to put all this together without going too into detail. But there was a time when, in the early years when I first started, 2001 was the first rave scene. If you want to get the history. Over the years, it kind of died down. And then towards 2010, 2012, you have this upswing of EDM in society, in the music, in the culture, in the festivals, and everything. We were on that upswing where your rock bands that you watched were now the DJs that you watched. And everyone knows that, and that's still going on. You can go to festivals now, and it's mostly DJs. It's all DJs. Big ones like Coachella.
So what do you? I my theory, but what happened? What's your theory on how techno kind of died down and then kind of EDM emerged? Did Eminem kill it when he said nobody listens to techno?
That's funny.
It just slept for 5 or 6 years, and all of a
sudden
it reemerged.
Wrong. He was very wrong. I love Eminem, but he was very wrong. Well, it lived underground, and overseas it just really kept going. But it was not part of the mainstream pop culture. But the pop culture artists, Britney Spears, I don't know, all of them, started incorporating these producers, and that was there in the background. And then that grew from there.
Whit loved the Eminem reference, by the way. But it's interesting. Now you go to Vegas now, and there's 2 types of clubs. You got hip hop clubs and EDM, and it's a massive. That's another business that blows my mind too. The DJing business on a big scale is an amazing business. Okay, so I want a couple more things. The mural project. Tell us a little bit about your guys' involvement in that and how that became a thing.
Yeah, so we knew Shane from Art Wino up in DC, and he was doing very international, amazing artists, and he had interest in bringing those international artists to places to do murals, large scale murals.
Right.
Philly was already known for having some murals, and other larger cities were known in it, and it was like kind of like a touristy possibilities with it. Like it wasn't just like gutter art, or you know what I mean. It was seen as like a nice thing, to a lot of people.
Sure.
So we wanted to bring it here,
Right.
and Shane wanted to bring it here, and so it was a collaboration of sorts. We featured it a lot in our magazine, and we brought a lot of huge international artists here. And now in this city, there's more than 45 murals, and then definitely more with Michael Broth and Ed Trask and his crew that also do their own mural project. So the town of Richmond is pretty full of murals, really, and there's like tours and everything. So we were a part of that in a way of support. Also in funding, we went through the city, and the city did its own help on funding, and now it is just like the breweries. It is an integral part of Richmond, Virginia. Yeah. And so I'm really proud of that. I think it's amazing that when people come to Richmond, Virginia, they can be like, go to Hardywood and jump on a bus and go see murals and blah, blah, blah.
Sure. Yeah, it's amazing because I got to Richmond around the same time you did, and just seeing the evolution of Richmond in the last 20 years, it is amazing to see what it's become, and it's exciting to see what it's going to be next. Yeah,
that's a good question.
Yeah, who knows what the future holds? But so let's hit on a few more things. So you were leading into I guess you're passionate about Richmond, which is obvious. But let's get into some favorite restaurant in Richmond.
Put me on the spot.
If you can only pick one.
I mean, it's hard not to say.
Or three.
Three. Okay,
we'll
cool.
Give you 3.
Let's do 3. Mekong.
Yeah.
That's a given.
Yeah.
I think anyone that knows me that comes to Richmond I'm gonna say, go to Mekong. I think I would also say go to Mama Zoo's. For another obvious reason. It's just really amazing food and a really amazing atmosphere, and you might even get a really angry waiter.
Sure, the angrier the better. That's
part
of the allure.
Makes you feel like it's New York, and you're interrupting them by ordering. They're like, well, you don't know what you're ordering. Yeah. Have you not looked at the chalkboard? What is wrong? You should not even be here. And you're like, that's great. I love that. So that's fun. And what is a third restaurant that I would say? I'd have to. Oh, Cuba Cuba. Yeah, Cuba Cuba. Yeah.
Big Cuba Cuba fan?
I've had the Cuban from Cuba Cuba since college for sure. Yeah. I can remember walking to get the Cuban sandwich, going back to my place on Floyd. Right. My apartment that I share with 5 people or something.
Yeah. Favorite local band?
Yeah, you told me you were going to ask that, and I said, well, I can't really get into local bands too much, but I said I would go to the history and go to the metal because I like the metal stuff.
Sure.
And so Lamb of God and Gwar and Municipal Waste, I'll put those 3 on my ultra bands of metal bands of Richmond, Virginia. I'm a big Lamb of God fan. I've always loved Lamb of God. We've interviewed him a couple times, and I've seen him at Barbecue. So I've always been a big fan of Lamb of God, and that's that's the heavy stuff. And then, No BS Brass Band and the Mekong Express and Sleepwalkers and Trillions, and I don't know, man. There's a lot of good bands here.
Sure. Yeah, you and Martina both felt guilty just naming one.
Yeah, it's guilty saying anything because you're you get a call from someone.
You're gonna leave somebody out. Yeah. Hopefully they're not watching. All right, so you've got a friend coming in town, never been to Richmond, wants to experience Richmond. They're going to come in town on a Friday and leave on a Sunday. What are you going to do with that person? How are you going to showcase Richmond to this person?
Yeah, that's a good one. Let's see. Well, we have to probably more than likely. I would want to tell them to meet me from the airport at Hardywood. When are they coming in?
Friday afternoon, leaving Sunday morning.
Friday afternoon. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well,
this is your fantasy. You do it.
Yeah.
Whatever
Meet me.
You want it to be.
Meet me at Hardywood. We'll start at Hardywood, and then we're probably going to have dinner at Mekong because that makes a lot of sense. And then we're probably going to go to the Camel or the Broadberry if there's a show, or the National if it's something bigger.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually done Hardywood, Mekong, National to see Method Man and Redman. I've done that for real with friend coming in.
Yeah, that's a heck of a night.
So we got to do the breweries.
Yeah, sure.
At this time, I would just be like, let's just go to Scott's Edition and see what happens.
Right.
Because we go to Scott's Edition and there's everything.
Right.
So we could just literally go to Scott's Edition and just kind of see where the night takes us. And
Sure.
then the next day would probably be a VMFA, depending on what's going on, but VMFA or the river.
Right.
Go into the river because I'm a big fan of the river.
Sure.
So I think all those things. And then the next night, we'd probably just go back to Scott's Edition. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, unless there's something major planned. Then you have a favorite brunch spot that you have to go Sunday morning before they leave?
Oh gosh, what is? Oh yes. Lunch supper would be a great,
Sure.
great lunch spot. Obviously, Pearlie's would be fantastic.
Yeah, that's a good hangover medicine there.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
Pearlie's would just be so good. I think Pearlie's would be a great bet.
Anything else I didn't ask you want the viewers to know about you, RVA Mag, anything like that?
Not necessarily. I mean, you didn't get into PLF maybe.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that.
In Gallery 5. So through Gallery 5,
Yeah.
I met Conway, part of Party Liberation Front, and then we made a nonprofit Party Liberation Foundation. We do large events to fund art.
Right.
And large art. Like
Sure.
I said, like the giant marionette skeleton and various art projects that we can do at various things. And at Diversity Richmond, we have the big Decemberween New Year's project that's part of that. We also do Gallery 5 out in front of Gallery 5 for October and April's First Friday. And we bring performers from up and down the East Coast. 60 or 70 fire performers. We do full sound setup. We usually do after parties and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of what I do as well, which is a connection into the art scene.
Right.
And Gallery 5, which I've been part of in some way since 2005.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's cool. And then when do you guys do that?
The next one will be October.
Okay.
That will be for the Carnival of Five Fires.
Okay.
And that's always a large street fire show.
Right.
And then we usually have like an after party or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great, man. Well, thank you for your time. As a Richmonder, thank you for all that you do for Richmond to make it interesting and a better place to live.
Oh, thanks to Richmond.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us in this awesome building too, by the way.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. It's pretty old.
And it's always awkward to
Probably
know
haunted.
are we still running? Did you get It's Haunted? Hopefully we got It's Haunted on there. That's a good closing.